Hello everyone, my name is Violetta Gaia and we are here with the UUGCCR.com supporting and advocating for unconditional universal global compassion, especially in response to crisis, specifically with the Palestinian situation that's happening right now. I'm sitting here with my good friend Hoot, who will be discussing in further detail more of how we have formulated how compassion can be a solution to the issues that are affecting our world today.
So I've been working on messages for humanity and studying human consciousness. And I've found what I call blind spots or dead zones, black holes in human consciousness. And I found a huge one when studying the what's called the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I don't call it that. I call it the Palestinian situation. And what it is the world, the peace movement, the United Nations Security Council, the General Assembly of the United Nations, the peace movement, all seem to be posturing and postulating and making resolutions and demands and positions, and nobody is talking about granting asylum, giving sanctuary, creating refuge for Palestinians who would like to not be where they are, who would choose to leave if they had the opportunity. And to me, this is so obvious. And there's no one representing this point of view. So we're here to represent it because our position, UUGCCR.com, stands for Universal Unconditional Global Compassion. And our philosophy is that universal unconditional global compassion can be applied to any situation, and we can come up with lasting solutions. And when we approach any situation from any other perspective, we don't really come up with lasting solutions. We solve one problem by creating another problem. And so we're here to apply this principle and show how the Palestinian situation can be resolved and to present that resolution. So the solution is going to the Palestinians, finding out who wants to leave, and making it happen for them. And now, I feel the listeners out there, some of you are feeling uncomfortable with this idea, and you're thinking about tuning out. But before you do, let me present some of the reasons why, some of the objections that you might be having to the idea that I'm presenting. So the first thing that comes up is we can't go and offer asylum, offer a place to go, give refuge, sanctuary to Palestinian people, because that would be helping Israel to accomplish its goal of the ethnic cleansing of Palestine, which is basically what the goal has been since 1947. And so this isn't about helping Israel. This is about doing the compassionate thing. Because when you see people being bombed and starved, what do? And so far, the world, what we're doing is we're not really doing something. We're saying things. Doing something would be to go and find out of the Palestinian population who wants to leave, if they could, and offering them the opportunity to do so. This will resolve the situation because in 7 months of bombing and billions of dollars spent, Israel has managed to kill 35,000 Palestinians, roughly, and that's about 5,000 a month. So what we're proposing, we're going to call it the 997 Palestinian Refugee Project. The reason why we're calling it the 997 is because in the Nazi era, the United States granted asylum to 997 Jewish refugees. And that's for the entire duration of the war. It was supposed to be 1,000, but the ship left the harbor before the last 3 people got on. And those 997 people were interned in a camp in Oswego, New York, and kept there for the duration of the war. So what we're calling for is we're asking the world, we're saying that this, what characterizes Israeli-Palestinian conflict, has gone on for these 76 years because it's only ever been addressed as an Israeli-Palestinian conflict when it's actually a global conflict. And the solution is going to have to involve the whole world. And so no one's ever been able to see the solution because everybody's trying to figure out who's right and who's wrong. Well, we need to get past who's right and who's wrong, because what good does it do to us to be right if we're dead? And the focus on who's right and who's wrong blinds us to the solution, which is, the solution is beyond judgment. Universal means for everyone. Unconditional means unconditional, without judgment. Global means global. Compassion is the solution to this problem. Briefly going into the history of it. In World War I, there was a stalemate. Nobody could win. It was perpetual war, unless the United States came into the war. And the United States was non-interventionist. The political climate in the United States is, no, we don't want to get involved. So, the British came to influential Jews in politics, in banking, professional people that had influence, and said, look, if you will, basically Zionist Jews that wanted to have a state of Israel, that lived in the United States, that had influence in politics, said, if you will help us, if you come into the war on the side of Britain and help us defeat Germany, we'll give you Palestine. It was called the Balfour Declaration, which was that if you'll get the United States to enter the war, help Britain defeat Germany, we'll give you Palestine. The Balfour Declaration was a promise made to the Zionist branch of the Jewish people. Zionist meaning people that wanted to create a Jewish state in Palestine. Come World War II, Palestine was a British colony. And Britain did not honor the Balfour Declaration. And at least up until 1938, the policy of the Nazis was the ethnic cleansing of the land that they conquered, any country that they conquered. They wanted the Jews out. In 1932, when Hitler came into power, one of the first things he did was he organized something called the Havara, Havara Transfer Agreement, which was a program to create a Jewish state in Palestine. And this was facilitated and subsidized by the Nazi government. And so, as things progressed, at least up until 1938, the goal was forced expulsion of the Jewish people, ethnic cleansing through forced expulsion. So the idea was, we need to make things very unpleasant for the Jewish people so that they will want to leave. And we need to do that in the face of the world so that the world will want to take them. Things were getting very difficult. And it was, let's just keep increasing the pressure until the Jews want to leave, and B, until the world wants to receive them. And so things had gotten difficult enough to where in 1938, July 6th through 15th, 1938, Franklin Delano Roosevelt called for a global conference to figure out how to deal with the Jewish refugee problem. Basically, that the world would receive Jewish refugees, and that each country would make a pledge of how many refugees they were going to receive. And there were 32 countries. Attended this conference. So it was the United Kingdom, the United States, Sweden, Switzerland, Uruguay, Venezuela, Argentina, Australia, Guatemala, Belgium, Haiti, Bolivia, Honduras, Brazil, Ireland, Canada, Mexico, Chile, the Netherlands, Colombia, New Zealand, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Cuba, Norway, Denmark, Panama, Dominican Republic, Paraguay, Ecuador, and Peru. So the outcome of this conference was the Dominican Republic agreed to take Jewish refugees, and later Costa Rica joined with the Dominican Republic. The United Kingdom, Britain, agreed to take 1,000 children. It was called the Kindertransport. No adults, only 10,000 children. And the United States agreed to take 1,000 refugees, which ended up being 997. The other 28 countries said, no, we're not going to receive Jewish refugees. Well, it turns out that a few years later, almost every country that declined at the time turned around and did receive Jewish refugees. Latin America admitted 84,000. And the only two countries never received any Jewish refugees, which was Cuba and Ireland. The message that the Nazis received at that time was, there's nowhere in the world that these people can go. Great Britain reneged on the Balfour Declaration. Then, the next thing that happened was Kristallnacht. which is after the evening conference basically failed. And Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass, was November 9th and 10th, 1938. And at that time, businesses were destroyed, synagogues were burned, and 30,000 Jewish people were forcibly taken to concentration camps. So what happened between July 6th and November 9th is, well, the Nazis received the message. The world's not going to take Jewish refugees. And so then, okay, well, we need to make it a lot more difficult. We need to make a demonstration, Kristallnacht, of what's going to happen to these people so that the world will change their mind. Well, the world didn't change their mind. Between 1938 and 1941, 42, we're gradually moving from ethnic cleansing, forced expulsion, into genocide, to where you get to Babi Yar, where 33,000 Jewish people were exterminated in 2 days, September 29th and 30th, 1941. So then, in January 20th, 1942, was the Wannsee Conference. And the Wannsee Conference was Nazi party trying to figure out, okay, well, we couldn't ethnically cleanse these people. Now we got them all rounded up in these camps. What are we going to do with them? And that's when the final solution came into play. And Hitler wasn't even at the Wannsee Conference, where the decision of the final solution, which was the genocide. At the Wannsee Conference, the genocide was made official. And from that point on, it was full-on genocide. So now you have 5,400,000 more people, Jewish people, exterminated after the Wannsee Conference, and 600,000 before. The point of all this is that the whole world was involved, because if the world had opened its doors on a much larger scale than what actually happened, a few 100,000, certainly less than 1 million Jewish refugees got out. And it's claimed that 6 million were exterminated, and that was somewhere between half and 2/3 of the Jewish population. So potentially there were 9 million refugees, Jewish refugees. And this genocide could have been minimized by the world opening its doors, granting asylum, granting refuge to Jewish refugees. It didn't happen. And so the fact of the extermination of 6 million Jews wasn't just attributed to the Nazis. I mean, they were proactively killing people. But by not opening its doors, by not having compassion for the Jewish people, the world missed an opportunity to minimize this situation. And now, you know how we say history repeats itself? Well, history, it repeats itself because we keep making the same mistakes over and over again. But history is something that we can look at and we can figure out what not to do. So we're asking, please, world, this time, let's not make that same mistake. Let's reach out as a global effort to the Palestinian people in Gaza, the Palestinian people in the West Bank. That is roughly almost 5.5 million people. Let's find out how many of those people would like to leave, and let's give them the opportunity to do so, and let's make it happen. Now, starting with the United States, because we hear about how the United States is funding Israel and is complicit in the situation. Well, the least that the United States can do, if we're not going to stop, I'm American, if we're not going to stop funding Israel, and Israel isn't going to stop the ethnic cleansing of Gaza and the West Bank, the very least we could do is go and rescue those people. Like we had the boat people in Vietnam. We admitted Vietnamese people because when we pulled out of Vietnam, these people were vulnerable. And so we had Vietnamese refugees and we brought them here. We let them into this country. Why aren't we doing that for the Palestinian people? So the United States should be, first and foremost, we're not going to stop funding Israel. Israel's not going to stop the ethnic cleansing of Gaza. The least we could do is start granting asylum to Palestinian refugees. Bring them here, bring them to the United States. So we're calling this the 997 Palestinian Refugee Project. And we want the world to grant asylum, refuge, sanctuary to 997 Palestinians per day. The United States has the primary responsibility to participate in this project. It's imperative, compassion dictates that we do this. People want to talk about, well, why doesn't Egypt let the Palestinians in? Well, you can see Israel is driving the people south, pressing them up against the Rafah Gate. They've been saying for 76 years, we want these people out. They're not even wasting their time saying it now. They're showing this is what's happening. This is what's going to happen to these people. We're going to have them out. If it means killing them, then that's what we're going to have to do. So it will be genocide if the world doesn't offer a solution. It's a three-pronged solution. It's not an Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It's a global conflict. And the inaction of the world in the Nazi era has helped lead to this. Because even after World War II was over, there was still rampant anti-Semitism. And nobody wanted these people. Nobody wanted people that were psychologically damaged and emaciated and had no way to provide for themselves. So the Jews had nowhere to go. And the current situation comes from people feeling that they had nowhere to go and that they had to have a place that was their own. Now, I can't even say it was a mistake that was made back then, that having this place that God promised gave them the entitlement to drive these other people who were there out. I mean, in retrospect, we could say it was a mistake because look where it's led. And the process of trying to eliminate the Palestinian people was systematic oppression. And whatever natural enmity the Palestinian people may have had towards the Jewish people prior to that is exacerbated by this process. And so, in large part, Israel's policy helped to create the situation that it's dealing with right now.
So, it's my understanding, what I'm getting from this is that the compassionate solution is if there are Palestinians that are seeking refuge that want out, then the compassionate response would be to organize or grant them asylum, sanctuary, either in America or in other countries, organize a safe place for these people that want out. So beyond
Correct.
any agenda, beyond any being seen as this or that, it's a basic, these people are wanting out of a situation that has become a genocide and being compassionate towards that and helping them.
Correct. And so, having a system where these people have more rights than these other people, it defies natural law. All people have the same rights. The Palestinian people have as much right to be there as the Jewish people. And so, right now, you have roughly equal populations of 7 million Jewish people and 7 million non-Jewish people between the river and the sea. And if you even got just 1 million of the non-Jewish people out, the Palestinian, who's called the Palestinian people, out of there, then Israel could have a political majority and they could have a one-state solution, a democracy with equal rights for everyone. And it's very similar to what happened in the United States. What is it, 160 years ago, we ended slavery and granted equal rights to black people, and we still have economic apartheid in this country. We still have inequality, we still have discrimination, but gradually the blacks and the whites in America are learning to get along with each other. And it's taken a long time. It's a very slow process. Well, the Jews and the Palestinians, or the Muslim people, the Arabic people, are going to need to learn how to get along with each other. And it might take hundreds of years for that to happen. We have to start the process. Starting the process is talk about Palestinian self-determination. Well, the first place you got to start is the people who want to leave, the people who want to stay. And the people who want to leave shouldn't be victimized by a process that is, right now you have people that want to destroy Israel, people that would choose not to leave under any circumstances, people that feel that if they die that they're martyrs, and it's a strategy that the more Palestinians that Israel kills, the worse Israel looks in the eyes of the world. And they're willing to be martyrs for that cause. And right next to them are people who just want to live. And they don't have an agenda. Maybe they're not happy with Israel, but maybe they don't have an agenda that they want to destroy Israel. And they would just as soon get as far away from Israel as they could. And these people are being victimized by the agenda of the two parties that want to destroy each other. The Israelis that want to destroy the Palestinians that want to destroy the Jews, the Jewish people. And so the people that don't want to make their purpose in life, that it's so important to destroy Jews, more important than their own life. There's other people. There's people that want to live. There's people that don't want to fight the Jews. The people that don't want to destroy the Jews. People that just want to live their lives. We need to get them out. And by getting out 997 per day, minimum, that's roughly 30,000 per month. That's 6 times the amount of people that the Israeli government is killing right now.
Focusing on compassion and really just honing in on that aspect of being able to give it to people who want to receive it, no matter who they are. So this is just anyone that's being faced with genocide, the Genocide Convention, and these nations that have taken these stands towards helping people in these circumstances. It's important for us to just see it as that. I'm not focused on anything other than the compassionate side of helping these people that are facing genocide, that want some help. If they choose to want help, they should be able to have a way out, a safe place to be, a safe place to wait out this situation. And really focusing on the fact that that's the compassionate frequency that can have the rippling effect of diffusing the situation, of ending the genocide.
For $7,000, an adult Palestinian can leave Gaza, walk through the Rafah Gate, and $2,500 for a child. That's what it costs. It's not that they can't leave, it's that essentially they can't leave. The people who have $7,000 and $2,500 for their children, they can leave. Well, the world has a huge refugee problem right now, not just in Palestine. For example, right now in the Sudan, there's 8.6 million refugees that have been created in the last, I think, year. And 20,000 per day are fleeing the Sudan. The difference is they can flee. They can leave. The Palestinians are trapped. That's the difference. So long term, we have to deal with the entire refugee problem globally. But right now, this Palestinian conflict is really dangerous because it's the risk of escalating to a global conflict. In fact, in just the last 4 or 5 days, Israel bombed the Iranian embassy in Damascus, Syria. And then Iran responded by an attack on Israel, and Israel responded by an attack on Iran. And hopefully they're just taking pot shots at each other and posturing, because neither side, hopefully, want this to escalate to a global conflict. But things could get out of hand very easily, and we could find ourselves, look, desperate people, desperate nations do desperate things. And there's an element in the politics of Israel. It's called the Samson Protocol. And what it says is, Samson brought the Colosseum down on his own head. And it's basically saying, well, if we're going to be destroyed, we're going to take everyone with us. The government there is, we're not going down. If we're going down, the whole world's going down. I'm not saying that everyone in Israel or the government feels that way, but there's an element. And when someone's driven or a country's driven to desperate measures, they don't necessarily act out of reason. They act out of desperation. And a desperate Israel, they have at least 80 nuclear warheads. And
So to diffuse this situation in any way is going to diffuse the potential for this catastrophic event.
no, if Israel stops the assault on Gaza, then basically the position of the other enemies of Israel is, if you don't stop doing this, we're going to do this.
So for them to stop, we'll diffuse it.
How do we get Israel to stop? Okay, well, they need an off-ramp. The off-ramp is the 997 Project. So we're calling on the United States. You're building a pier on Gaza Beach. You don't need a pier. You could use rowboats. But you got some supplies coming in. So every day you bring in a boatload of supplies. You unload the supplies and you load up 997 Palestinians and take them to the United States. And Egypt. Start letting 997 Palestinians per day into Egypt. I mean, if Egypt doesn't cooperate, it's much more difficult, because Egypt could provide a staging ground for people to leave, and then the countries of the world don't have to go into Gaza to get these people. They can just go to Egypt. And Turkey. They've got a flotilla on their way to land on Gaza Beach bringing supplies. They can pick up 997 Palestinians. Cuba. You didn't take any Jewish refugees? Here's your chance. Can you take 997 Palestinian refugees? Ireland, you didn't take any Jewish refugees. Can you take some Palestinian refugees? Latin America, you took 84,000 Jewish refugees. Can you take 84,000 Palestinian refugees? So, 3 million people in the West Bank, 2.4 million people in Gaza. That's roughly 5.5 million people. And after the Wannsee Conference, that's how many Jews were exterminated. Is 5.4 million people. 3 and 2.4 is 5.4 million people. Interesting that those numbers match. Of those countries, those 32 countries in 1938 that refused to accept Jewish refugees, grant asylum to Jewish refugees, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Belgium, France, Netherlands, Norway, and Denmark got invaded by the Nazis. And those countries, especially Denmark and Norway, made it very difficult for the Nazis to accomplish their objectives against the Jews. They just didn't cooperate. And so Norway, Denmark, Netherlands, Belgium, and France made heroic efforts to protect Jewish people. You know, I was draft age in the Vietnam War. And I joined the student strike to end the war in Vietnam. In 1970, we stopped the draft. But the war didn't end until 1975. So now, with what's going on with Palestine, now we have a peace movement. There's been peace movements since the Vietnam War, but now we really have a sudden, rapidly manifesting peace movement. But the peace movement is presenting as pro-Palestinian and anti-Zionist Israel. So the thing about universal, unconditional, global compassion is it needs to be applied equally. So when you say, oh, well, we have compassion for the Palestinians, but we're condemning Israel, it's not really compassion. It's judgment. No matter how altruistic it may present. So we don't have to agree with Israel. We don't have to condone anything that Israel's doing. But we need to understand. And when we're judging, we're not trying to understand. We're just trying to be right by pointing a finger and saying somebody else is wrong. We need to go beyond this concept of right and wrong. And so we need to try to understand Israel, where they're coming from. And it's not really that hard to understand. That's why I was going into the history, but...
And also understand the Palestinians. Like you were saying, not everyone wants to stay. And we don't really know, who out of those people that are there want to stay and want to leave, and trying to understand them, being able to offer some help to those people that want it. It's another form of understanding and sending compassion in a real way.
Well, in my opinion, there have to be at least 1 million.
Well, regardless of opinion, to really find out and understand and actually figure that out is really important. Not just to say, oh, no one wants out, it's not fair.
Yeah, that's a lot of the rhetoric is, quote unquote, the Palestinians don't want to leave. And Kamala Harris comes out and she says, there will be no forced expulsion of Palestinians from Gaza. Well, that's just like saying there will be no forced expulsion of prisoners from prison. Or the prisoners don't want to leave the prison.
And there's also nothing forced. It's if they want to.
Yes, if they want to.
There's no force to anything. It's if they want to, then they will have an opportunity to.
No, it's Israel's trying to force them.
No, I get that, but I'm just saying that still applies in our solution. It's not a forced refugee opportunity. It's giving opportunity to those that want it.
There's people that...
And organizing that, yeah.
There's people that would rather die than leave. And there's people that would rather leave than die. So this October 7th thing kind of split the Jewish world into two camps. Jewish perspectives used to be from one extreme to the other with every point of view in between. Well, the middle's dropped out. And you're either on one side or the other now. So it's separating the Jewish world. And this, we can call it vetting of the Palestinian population, of finding out who would choose to leave, who would rather leave than die, from the people who would rather die than leave. We'll split the Palestinian world in the same way that the Jewish world's been split. And, when the Chinese conquered Tibet and they drove, Buddhism out, it created basically a Buddhist diaspora. It brought Buddhism to the world. And when the Romans drove the Jews out of Palestine in roughly 70 AD and created the Jewish diaspora that spread Jewish culture around the world, which had both good and not so good results. This has happened over and over again through history. And just like posturing, making statements like, oh, there was a poll that said that the Palestinians don't want to leave Gaza. Well, the poll is finding out who wants to go and who wants to stay. We're calling on the peace movement to change your, reconfigure yourself, please. And when you want to block traffic, take over a bridge, demonstrate, make demands, please demand that the world open its doors and receive Palestinian refugees. Shut the whole world down. Demand that they receive Palestinian refugees. Because the way it's presented now is demanding, the peace movement is demanding that the United States stop funding Israel. Well, we already went over that. The United States isn't going to stop funding Israel because they'll never tell you this, but they can't stop funding Israel. The decision to support Israel was made over the last 76 years. It's not like all of a sudden we can just snap out of it and not support Israel, because then Israel becomes a target. And Israel's a NATO country. So once Israel is massively under attack, every NATO country's got to come in. That's a world war. So creating this Palestinian diaspora is a way of preventing a world war. It's damage control. It's not going to be about who's right and who's wrong. Because as long as we're stuck in figuring out who's right and who's wrong, and having to have somebody be wrong so somebody else can be right, we're not going to resolve anything. And it's not an option right now. So peace movement, reconfigure, do something. There's only one thing to do when you see somebody being bombed and starved, is go get them somewhere where they're not being bombed and starved. It's obvious. Now's an opportunity for the world to correct the error, the failure of humanity to do the humanitarian thing in the Holocaust era. And we can do the humanitarian thing right now, and we need to do that. It says that any state that's a member of the Genocide Convention has the responsibility to prevent genocide. And the way to prevent genocide is to get the people that are being genocided out of where they're being genocided. Get them somewhere else. That's how you prevent genocide. You've heard of UNRWA, United Nations, UNRWA. Is a program that deals with Palestinian refugees in Arabic countries. There's another program, UNHCR, which deals with Palestinian refugees in non-Arabic countries. And they have a very extensive vetting process. I was looking it up. I don't have the details written down here, but like 2 Palestinians applied for asylum to this country, and 4 applied to this other country. And this vetting process is much too cumbersome. The vetting process only needs to be who wants to stay and who wants to go. And once the world takes the responsibility, steps up to the plate, says we're going to organize, we're not going to make the mistake of the Evian conference in July 1938. We're going to organize. We're going to have every country's going to step up and agree to a quota of how many Palestinians they're willing to take. And Israel will stop. And World War III won't happen. It's that simple. The alternative is unthinkable. And what we're talking about is a quantum shift in human consciousness. It's the realization that the one being that we call humanity, that we're all fractals of that one being. And when you look at another person, you're looking at another version of yourself. And that you can't harm someone else without harming yourself. And the quantum shift in human consciousness is the realization that no one can harm anyone without harming themselves. That is the quantum shift. And without that quantum shift, we're no longer a viable species. This is your home, and all the creatures of the earth live in your home with you. And it's your responsibility to take care of them, to take care of your home, take care of the place where you live, take care of the environment that you live in. It's a responsibility to caretake. And we're like the baby. When the baby is born, the first thing that the baby learns how to meet its needs, how to survive, is by crying. But then at a certain point, the baby gets to a certain age, and this strategy is no longer effective. And the baby, all of a sudden, one day, overnight, has to unlearn the behavior that it learned how to survive, and learn this new behavior, which is really just the opposite. How to survive by not crying. And we see adults that still want to cry to get their way, and it's not effective. It doesn't work for them so well. And so humanity is like the baby. We learn how to survive by aggression, by dominating nature and dominating each other. And that strategy is no longer working for us, because if we continue to do that, we're in the process of self-destructing. And so we have to unlearn that behavior that we learned virtually overnight and learn this new behavior that's the opposite of competing against each other and competing against nature. We need to work together in order to survive. There were studies done of the Holocaust, and the studies showed that people who stole food from each other, who stole shoes from each other, who stole clothing from each other, had a much lower survival rate than people who, they called it organizing, where groups of people would form together and cooperate with each other. So if you had one piece of bread, you shared it with 8 people. And those people that cooperated like that, they had a higher survival rate. I can't quote you which book that information is in. My library burned in a wildfire, California wildfire. But so we, the world now, we're in this global concentration camp of, population growth, populations pushing into each other, climate change, drying up habitats, making agriculture unfeasible in certain areas, creating refugee populations. So are we going to be the ones that hoarded our scraps of bread and sit there and we're going to watch the world? We're going to watch, like the Western countries, the civilized countries that, have evolved economies and technology that are more capable of dealing with the effects of climate change. Are we going to sit and watch millions of people starve? Or are we going to reach out? Because if we go by the studies of what happened in the Holocaust, will realize that we might think we're saving ourselves by saying, oh, we don't have enough food for those people, so we can't let them in. We can't let them come here. We might think we're saving ourselves, but we might be destroying ourselves. And saving ourselves might be realizing that universal, unconditional, global compassion is the solution for humanity to continue to be a viable species, to continue dwelling on this planet.
Hello everyone, my name's Violetta Gaia, and we're here at the UGCCR.com out on Mount Shasta, bringing you a message of unconditional, universal, global compassion. I'm here with my good friend Hoot. We're going to talk about how compassion can be applied as a solution to the Palestinian situation happening today.
Since October 7th, there have been just under 35,000 Palestinians killed in the bombing and the famine. And it turns out 13,000 of them were children. And so today, now, there's 19,000 children who have been orphaned, who have no parents and no family left. So I want to talk about them, and I want to tell you about a dream that I had about a week ago. So I was with a group of people, and we went to Palestine. I thought we were maybe in Gaza, but I didn't hear any bombing, and I didn't see any rubble. So I don't know exactly where it was, but there was an area that had a stone wall, pretty good sized area that had a stone wall going all around it. And so me and this group, we went through this entrance in the stone wall, and we met with some Palestinians. And while we were meeting with them, I found they had a wide format photocopy machine, and I started making them some prints of some of my art. And I got partly through it, and then somehow the meeting that I was in, that we were having, ended. And so we all left. We went out through that gate. And I left my whole thing set up because I thought I was going to be able to go back in and finish up what I had started and talk to them more. But when I went to go back in, I was told that I couldn't go back in, that the meeting was over, and that I couldn't go back in. And I was like, well, I left my things inside. And anyway, somehow I got back in, and it was just me and meeting with these Palestinian people. I don't know if they were Palestinian. I don't know if they were Hamas or exactly where I was. I was talking to them about, well, if you guys had a way to leave, would you want to leave? And at first they said, yes, of course we want to leave. We don't want to stay here and keep being bombed and starve to death. But then they hesitated, and they talked among themselves in their language for a minute. And then they came back to me, and they're like, we were never presented, we never even thought that we'd have any way to leave. So we never even really considered the possibility of if we would want to leave or not. And we really need more time to think about it. And some of us might want to leave, and some of us might not want to leave, but we're not really sure. But what we do agree among ourselves is we want the children to be able to leave. We need to start this 997 project. There might be some political issues and some controversy about that. But there's 19,000 orphan children, and they're starving. And we're going to act as humanitarians and have compassion and be proactive at solving this problem by granting asylum, refuge, sanctuary to Palestinians who want to leave. Can we still stand by and watch 19,000 orphan children be bombed and starved to death? Isn't it imperative that we, the world, that every country, every group, every individual make an effort to get those people out of there? The issue is raising money to fund the 997 Palestinian Refugee Project. And, Britain, they had 10,000 children, kinder transport of the Jewish refugees that were allowed into Britain, no adults. Hey, Great Britain, can you get a kinder transport going for these children? Can you take 10,000 Palestinian orphaned children? And if not, please explain it to me, why that's not happening already. Explain to me why this isn't a thing, and that I'm here representing an idea, a concept that it seems to me everyone should be already representing. And we're sitting here talking about it, and why isn't it already pioneered? Why aren't there all kinds of groups, all kinds of countries, all kinds of people already organizing this process? The action has to be asylum, refugee, sanctuary for these refugees. That's the action. I couldn't find it. I searched and I listened for hours a day. Mostly I'm looking at alternative media, but I couldn't find anybody saying anything about it. It's a virtual desert of ideas about what's the humanitarian thing to do in this situation. Well, if we, the world, don't resolve this, this needs to be resolved, because if it's not, we run a very high risk of escalating into a global conflict, and that's going to affect everyone on Earth. All of us, every one of us. Well, I couldn't find anyone pioneering the idea that it would be a good idea to offer asylum, grant refuge and sanctuary to Palestinian refugees. And that just kind of I don't get it. I don't see how that is. I don't understand how that can be, because, and it was the same way, again, need to keep repeating, but in World War II, in the Holocaust era, it's the same thing. Nobody wanted Jewish refugees. Virtually no one wanted. There were some exceptions, but, to the number of a few 100,000 relative to several million refugees. And let's not repeat that. In school education, what we're taught about the Holocaust is basically saying Hitler killed 6 million Jews, right? And it doesn't mention, you have to dig really deep. I probably read 30 or 40 books, to uncover this information that the world didn't want to accept Jewish refugees, and that this is a major factor in what happened. That the world, acting out of compassion as a verb, doing the humanitarian thing to rescue Jewish refugees, to give them a place to go, would have minimized what happened. And the failure to do that maximized what happened. The whole world was involved in what happened then, and the whole world is involved with what's happening now. And it's a choice. And if we don't choose compassion, maybe we're not even choosing to save ourselves. Maybe that's what we need to do, even in order to save ourselves. Even for just selfish reasons of our own preservation, we need to do the humanitarian thing, which is clear, obvious what it needs to be. Granting asylum, refuge, sanctuary to Palestinians. Simple.
To learn more about what we're doing and stay in touch with us, go to ugccr.com. If you head to the contact section, you can make a donation. You can go look at the board of directors where you'll find us, our declarations of nonviolence. You can contact us.
If you do make a donation, I would also encourage you to email me your phone number, and I will give you a call and offer you a gift of one of my designs. I do this art. It's all done by hand. There's no computer involved. Basically what I do is I take an original hand-drawn image, of my image, and I make multiple copies, and I cut them up manually and rearrange them into new patterns, and I do that over and over again. And so if you're wondering, there's not an online store that you can go to and pick from. There's not going to be. I have a few hundred different images, and I'll just show you a couple of them right here. So if you do want to donate, please go to the contact section in the website. You'll find everything that you need there. Please, we're trying to build a database of the declarations of nonviolence. And so if you feel called to do that, we'd love to have your declaration submitted to the website. And you can read the declarations in the Board of Directors section that we already have. And we encourage you to do that. And thank you.
Thank you. I hope.